Whoa, just how I thought. And then Penny Lane says, sorry, Delilah, I gotta go. Then Delilah says, yeah, me too, I gotta go too. And then Delilah says, well, good luck. And then Penny Lane says, yeah, good luck, I'll see you tomorrow, I promise. And then Penny Lane says, time to go back inside. Then Penny Lane says, I'm getting all wet. And then Penny Lane says, what? And just like that, when Penny Lane says, what? And then Penny Lane says, wait a second. And then Penny Lane says, what's making that squeaky noise? And then Penny Lane says, I guess I know that squeaky noise. The rat. And then the rat shows up. And then Penny Lane shouts at the rat and jumping up and down. And the rat was climbing up an open window to the actress room where Mama Meow sleeps. And then the rat hisses at Penny Lane and went there. Then Penny Lane says, oh no, I gotta protect her. And then Penny Lane rushes in the house. And then Penny Lane was tracking rainwater everywhere. Penny Lane says, oh great, I'm tracking rainwater everywhere. That's right, I said, whoa, Penny. No tracking rainwater in the house. Only you track rainwater in the basement. And then Penny Lane says, what? And just like that, when Penny Lane says, what? And then Penny Lane says, great, now that I'm all soaking wet. Then Penny Lane says, well, at least I can shake the water off. Then Penny Lane says, that's much better. And then Penny Lane says, what am I going to do? I'm trapped and the rat is in the parents' room. Then Penny Lane says, how do I stop him? And then Penny Lane says, let me think. And then Penny Lane says, I know, maybe Delilah can help. She could get that rat. And then Penny Lane says, I just have to shout for her. And then Penny Lane says, okay, on the count of three, I'll shout for Delilah. And 3, 2, 1, go! And then Penny Lane says, Delilah! And then Delilah says, what? And then Penny Lane says, Delilah! And then Delilah says, Penny Lane? And then Penny Lane says, thank goodness you came home. And then Delilah says, Penny Lane, are you okay? What's wrong? And then Penny Lane says, there's a rat in the parents' room and he wants to hurt Mama Meow and I can't get out. Then Delilah says, don't worry, I'll get him for you. And just like that, when Delilah says, don't worry, I'll get it for you. And then Penny Lane says, you will? And then Penny Lane says, but be careful, Rarity's in the room. And then Delilah says, don't worry, I'll be careful and I'll take care of it. Then Penny Lane says, great, and hurry. And then Penny Lane says, she already entered the house. Delilah enters the house, and then Delilah has to be careful not to get seen. Then Rarity was chatting with me and Speedy, and then Delilah enters the dark room, and she was sniffing for the rat. And then the rat was under the And then Delilah sniffed and sniffed, and the rat was under the crib. And then Penny Lane says, what's going on up there? And then I said, Rarity, that was not your cat who was making a mess. It was. Then I said, Rarity, Penny Lane does not make a mess. It was your cat who was making a mess. And then Rarity says, oh, right, my mistake. My cats are always making messes. Then, meanwhile, Delilah was sniffing for the rat. Then sniff, 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 sniff. And then Delilah hears the rat squeaking. Then Delilah says, uh-oh. And then, yikes, the rat pounced on Delilah's face, scratching her right in the face. Delilah says, and then Delilah says, ow, get off me. And then Delilah got the rat off her face. They engaged a fight. And then Delilah began to fight the rat around the room, making a mess and knocking over furniture. Then Delilah says, aha, I got you. Then Delilah says, what? Then Delilah says, huh? And then the rat jumped over Delilah right on her head. And then Delilah almost got herself stuck when she was chasing the rat. And then Delilah hears the rat squeaking, and the rat was climbing on top of Bomba Meow's crib. And just before the rat was about to jump into the crib, Delilah says, no, get away from her. And then Delilah was about to get the rat, but missed, accidentally knocking over the crib again. Delilah says, then Delilah says, no. Then Delilah says, ow. And then Rarity says, well. And then Delilah says, ow, my paw, ouch. On waking up Bomba Meow and caused her to cry. And then Delilah says, oh, you're okay. And then Delilah hisses at the rat, and the rat hisses at her. And then I said, wait, is that Bomba Meow? And then Delilah manages to corner the rat. And then Delilah kills the rat under the falling curtains. And then Delilah says, hey. And then Rarity rushes in the room along with me and Speedy. We did not see the dead rat, just Delilah and the overturned crib. Rarity has to calm Bomba Meow down. And then we thought Delilah was attacking her. And then I let Penny Lane free. Then Penny Lane rushes in the yacht room. Then Penny Lane shows us the dead rat. And then I said, a rat! And then I said, wait, I thought a cat was attacking Bomba Meow. Maybe it turned out that she was just protecting her from the rat. And then Speedy said, yes, she was just protecting her from the rat. And then Penny Lane says, yeah, I was locked in the basement. And then Delilah rushed into the house to protect Bomba Meow.